Hello, Jiggy with three tables of 3-6 and some psychology and that kind of shit. So enjoy. What's up? What's up? Martin Fournier-Giguère with you. Three tables, 3-6. This is a live commentary video, and I will be targeting this video mainly on. Well, I haven't given it a title yet, but probably gonna be something like stepping up your game or something like that. It's probably gonna be it actually. Uh, and I will be talking in that video about trying to, as the title states it, step up your game and get to the next level and moving up in stakes and pretty much those kind of themes. And I thought about making that kind of video uh, after my pretty big downswing I had this month. Oh, sorry. Yeah, pretty big downswing I had this month. I felt like I wasn't playing like that bad during the downswing, but I felt like I was making mistakes. And at some point, I kind of sat down and realized that okay, I will have to start playing a bit better. Even if I'm playing good, I can play better. I know I can play better. And I decided to try and target my leaks and attack those leaks. And I thought to myself, well, this could make a very good video subject. So this is it. Probably going to be a two-part. As you can see, three tables live session. I decided to make it at 3-6 for no real reason. I didn't really want to make it at 5-10 because I do play these games day in and day out. And since I'm going to be talking quite a lot about targeting your opponent's specific weaknesses and trying to get more specific reads on people, I don't want to like give out all my reads on everyone I'm playing against. So I think 3-6 will still fit very well, and there are still a couple of regulars that I'm playing quite a lot with at these stakes. So yeah, I've been playing for some time now. Started my session like I don't know 30 minutes ago, setting up my stuff. Couple of relevant hands I will show you in the replayer. This I decided to call one, especially with me having the 9 of hearts. I think this is a board where you will fire once and shut down pretty often with air, so I don't mind calling one street and then folding to turn bet. And here I think check back and then calling the turn is pretty standard. Now this is obviously a value bet. I want to bet an amount that will get called by a queen. I think 45 would get called by king queen and ace queen, which are his most probable queens. I don't think he's calling any amount with anything else anyways, especially since there weren't that many draws on the turn. The only draw that was really out there got there on the river, so not a good spot to try and get hero called with a weak bet, I think. So yeah, I will be kind of like I did in my playing a rigging video at 510. I will be talking about my subject of stepping up your game and stuff like that, and switching that with the actual live play and my decision making on the tables. I will show you right before starting a couple of hands I've played which I think are kind of relevant. First one, I did lose a couple of buy-ins, but they were both on very standard semi bluffs and 3-bet pots where I had like 10 outs plus and missed both, so no big deal. Other stuff were much more standard, I'd say. Nothing to talk about really. There's that hand where I open ace 8 suited under the gun, and I get called by this guy who I assume is a regular since he's on every table. Seems to be playing solid so far, but yeah, the only thing I have so far is the 147 hands I have on him. I've never seen him at 510, so I'm gonna assume that 3-6 is his regular game, obviously. That's pretty much all the info that I have so far. So I obviously see bet that he calls. Turn comes 7 of clubs, he checks. I bet again and he calls again. And the river is a big 9 of hearts brick. I thought about betting again, but I decided otherwise because I thought that with my image, obviously I don't know if he knows me, but I'm gonna assume he kind of knows me. And I think he's gonna call more with 2 flush draws being missed. And I don't think he has any air in his range because the only flush draw that is going to check call twice here in these positions is the nut flush draw from the flop. And I have this one. So basically, I don't think he's ever folding a jack the way the board turned out with so many draws not getting there. I decided just to give up that one because, like I said, of the draw, of the board texture and stuff. If the river is a club, I'm definitely betting, and if the river is something over a jack, I'm definitely betting. Decided to give up. He ended up showing tens. So I do like the fact that I gave up that time. It's gonna give me the image of someone who is maybe likely to give up on river bluffs since it's like his first impression on me so far, which is not going to be true very often, to be honest. And the other kind of good hand, I raised to 12 from the button. Nanonako, who is very famous, doesn't need any introduction, I think. Makes it 54 on the big blind. This is kind of weird. I think it's like more than 4x, actually. And I just think this is too big for nothing. I don't think this sizing as a 3-bet has any merit whatsoever compared to a more standard, let's say 4x sizing. But it's not that much of a big deal. I call, obviously being kind of deepish. I flop an open-ender, he bets, I call. Turn is 10 of spades, he checks. I decide to take a stab at it. He calls the turn, and on the river I left myself with pretty much a perfect pot size bet, and he checks again. I know the river is a 7. I know there are a whole lot of draws that missed there, but I just felt like he wasn't holding a king like ever, and a 7 either, and I just felt like I wasn't getting called a lot there. I felt like he had something like ace 10 or some jacks or queens quite a lot, and that he was going to fold those on the river because I can obviously very well represent a king there, and he ended up folding pretty quickly, but he's taking every single decision very quickly anyway, so it doesn't mean that much. But yeah, I felt like even though the draws missed, I had a good spot to try and represent a king, and I just didn't think he had that king, and I didn't see him make a big hero call often enough for my bluff not to be profitable, basically. So that's pretty much it so far. The other guys at the table's Rockaholic, never seen him before, but when I sat down, he wrote in the chat, "Hey, is that Jiggy?" or something like that. So I know he knows me, and he probably watches my video. So hey, Rockaholic, hello, welcome to the video. And from with just that bit of info, and of course that gives me some insight on how he's going to attack me basically, and how he's going to play against me specifically. Nanonoko, like I said, is a monster, monster grinder, good regular. I haven't played that much against him, and all the times that I've played against him were pretty much in like a lot of tables going on for me. So I never tried to pick up any specific reads on him. I'm gonna try to do that a bit more during that video, see how it works. I do have some reads on him. I think he has quite a lot of leaks, even though he's not a lot, but he has some leaks. Even though he's still very good, I do think I can exploit him in some ways, and I'm a bit better than he is. He's obviously a way better grinder than anyone on the planet is probably, though, so I have to give him a lot of credit for that. So yeah, that's it so far. No hands while I was talking. So coming back on my initial subject, which is stepping up your game, at some point, especially if you've been playing the same stakes for a while, I don't know if a lot of you guys like kind of gave up on trying to move up in stakes. I mean, I see a lot of players, a lot of mid stakes regulars who are like, okay, I'm playing like 1-2 or 2-4, and I don't think I can beat the games at higher stakes, and I don't think I can handle the pressure at higher stakes and stuff like that. I'm not a really good example of that because I kind of approach it that way, but I'm still playing a bit higher, and I tended like back in the days when I was playing NL 100, 200, and 400, I was approaching the game that way, and I was very, very scared to move up in limits. But at some point, you have to realize that for two things. First thing, you have to try and move up in limits just because, well, if you try hard at getting better and some things do click in your head, you will make a whole lot more of money, of course, than if you don't try at all, basically. So not trying or not trying hard enough, I think just for this reason is going to be a mistake very often. And for another pretty big reason that I kind of realized recently, the fact that if you don't try super hard to move up and be the very best, at least be the very best at your limits, uh, you're gonna get bored by the game at some point. I'm pretty sure. I mean, what pushes most grinders and most elite players is the potential of becoming the very best players. And even if you feel like you will never become the very best player in poker and you will never become a Dur or a Phil Galfin, uh, still trying to be the very best at the limits you are playing is very, very important, I think, and it's still a very big feat, very big accomplishment that you can set yourself up to. I really believe that. So, two hands, I think, pre-flop here is obviously very standard. Like I said, I don't have any info on the guy. He's been 3-betting 5% so far, but it's on 92 hands, so not much to say there. I could call one straight, but he did 3-bet me. He hasn't 3-bet a lot so far. He's playing pretty tight, and he did 3-bet me after I've raised from under the gun +1. If I raise from the cutoff and that same spot happened, I'm probably peeling once here, but I don't feel like I'm winning the pot enough to justify a flop call here. Even if I don't have the best hand, there's still a pretty good chance that I'm gonna get bluffed away on later streets, I think. Not that big of a chance, but big enough for me to consider folding right away. Because just all in all, I'm not going to win the pot very often. This guy is definitely a fish. I haven't put him in my DrGiggy color code of approval of a fish, but he's playing horrible from what I've seen so far. And he's been extremely passive, so I just think I'm going to bet pretty small on the turn and then shove the river to make him fold anything but a jack. I think I get there on the river, which is obviously good news. But I think he's calling a lot on the flop. He could have like deuce in his range. He could have a 6 in his range as well. And I think by sizing what I've sized on the turn and then leaving myself with pretty much a pot size bet, I don't think he's going to remember that I've sized the way I sized on the turn, and he's just going to be scared of the big bet on the river most of the time with pretty much all of his holdings. He's probably not folding a jack just because he's a fish on the river, but then again, he could fold some weak kicked jack, which he is calling pre-flop with, so that's a plus for me. And there's, like I said, he's folding enough on the river, and I do have a flush draw. I didn't feel like checking it back was the right play here. So I think sizing small on turn, if I size bigger on the turn, just my play totally sucks, I think, because I could call here. I'd probably make some kind of play if for one thing if we were deeper, and other thing if I had a backdoor flush. But with just a gut shot no over, I don't feel like I can do anything profitable here on table 1. But yeah, that hand here, it's all in the sizing. I think flop sizing is going to be pretty standard, and I can't go too far away from my standard sizing just because I have to be balanced against the regular here, and I don't want to give off too much information about my hand. And I mean, standard bet sizing here is totally standard and acceptable. But when the fish calls, and this is a subject I wanted to abort during the video, and I will get back on it later. I really don't mind about like giving away betting patterns or sizing tales about my hand, just because they don't pick up on that. I see a lot of players making those mistakes against fishes and against bad regulars of like overthinking way too much, and then, oh, I can't bet too small, he's gonna know that I'm full of shit. But the truth is a bet in their mind most of the time, and the only thing I want here is to play my hand the best way possible to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And like I stated, my plan here was to accomplish to make him fold anything but a jack by the river, basically. And I felt like by betting 45, I think he's calling the turn every single time just because it's small. And then it accomplishes that for once. And other thing, it leaves me with a pot size bet on the river. And as a general rule of thumb, when you're planning on multi-barrel, that sucks. Yeah, on multi-barrel bluffs, you want to leave yourself with the biggest barrel possible for your last street that you've planned your bluff for, basically. And here, my last street was definitely the river. I think just trying to bluff the turn and giving up on the river is a mistake here, because he's going, oh, that's nice. He's going to call some, and he's going to call too much on the turn and things that he would fold on the river. So like I said, I wanted to leave myself a pot size bet, and I mean, we will never know if it would have worked, because I obviously rivered nuts and like the biggest care card any kind of tank, so which makes me think he folded a jack probably. But whatever, I still think this is the best way to approach the hand. Here I get check raise on the flop. I decided to flat that. I don't know the guy, but from my experience from check raises and stuff, I think it is going to be value sometimes, kind of a see my bluff sometimes, but I don't think there's any merits in re-raising the flop just because I know he's a regular and probably at least a pretty good hand reader, and I don't want to give off too much info about my hand, definitely, on the flop. And I'm just like, I don't think I'm ever like three betting over a check raise with a bluff on the flop. So I just keep my range very wide, and I allow him to make some mistakes on turn and river by just calling the flop. I don't think there's any merit in repopping the flop. Turn is flat, of course. There probably still are some bluffs and semi-bluffs in his range. I don't want to ship, because shipping just is too strong with King Jack getting there and stuff too. Turn wasn't a good card, of course, for me. I think it's gonna make him shut down with some stuff, especially with King Jack getting there, and he's gonna get there himself with King Jack or aces from time to time. But I don't think I had any other way to play the hand. And coming back on my initial subject again, like I said, I felt like I was talking about basically trying to get a lot better just for the fun of the game. And lately I decided that, okay, I was going to give my best to become the very, very best player at 5, 10, 10, 20 basically. And that's my goal. And I think it has some motivation lately to grind more and more. I had kind of lost some motivation for grinding at some point this year. Kind of in part because I just wanted to grind money and grind for money, and I didn't really like grinding, but setting myself that goal of trying to become the very best and trying to step up my game, I'm sure will definitely help me put volume in. And if you're a guy who has trouble putting some volume in, this is definitely something you want to look into. Against GMC, I don't remember his exact stats. I do have some like thinking reads on him. I've never don't remember. He does fold a lot to 3-bets, like 80% is, I think, is way too much. And I think it makes it profitable for me to 3-bet those kind of hands from the small blind, which is pretty much a perfect hand to 3-bet, plus the sizing, the stack sizes are really good for me to 3-bet and then have 3 barrels with a pot size shove on the river, depending on the board, but if I want to go ahead and try to bluff here. So yeah, like I said, if you have trouble putting volume in, or if you have trouble motivating yourself playing the game, try to step up your game. Sit down and review your game. I don't know, watch videos, talk with your friends and stuff, and encourage yourself of telling yourself, what the hell is that? Oh, I just discovered a new button on my mouse. This is dumb. Why would I want a shortcut for that? This is my Mac laptop. I'm not really used to it perfectly yet. But yeah, it is dumb to just stay at your level, and I mean, that's one of the very most beautiful thing about poker is flopping top set on a dry board, of course. The other thing is I could check back here, but I don't know. we're not really deep, but I don't feel like I'm gonna get that much value by checking back the flop, because if I check back, like, this guy definitely doesn't look aggressive. If I'm against an aggressive player, I'm definitely checking back more than I'm betting. But here against someone who's playing 15-13 and I assume is going to be just very passive in general, checking doesn't give me that much more value, especially because he's not going to try to bluff me on later streets very often when I check, which is kind of my goal when I want to check like perfect nuts, and I do cover pretty much everything on the board, so he's not calling that often with weaker hands. But still, he could have some queens left in his range and stuff like that, so I still feel like betting is perfectly fine here against that specific opponent. Here against UQ Boy, this is a classic going for 3 streets of value. If he has a 7, then fuck him. I'm obviously betting. I don't want to leave myself with too big of a bet on the river, because I want him to call the river that time, but I don't want him to scare him. I don't want to scare him on the turn either. I'm gonna look at 3-bet. He's 3-betting 15% so far, which is quite a lot. I think I can call that and see what happens. Yeah, since I want him to call my last bet here, I want to size my bet in a way that this is going to be fun. Yeah, in a way that he hasn't, like, I don't have to overbet the river, basically. I would want to do that with a bluff, but since I'm in value, I want to approach it the exact opposite way. And since he's a fish, coming back on what I was talking about earlier, I don't have to mind about like giving F tails or stuff like that. This is obviously like the very worst card in the deck, except for the King of Spades. I decided to check back because I didn't think that I was going to get like 3 streets of value from pretty much anything ever in these positions, having called a 3-bet and stuff. So I decided to check back and see what happens on later streets and try to get 2 streets from some things that could even fold right away in the flop, because they would fear like future betting streets. Turn is definitely a call. I think he's going to bluff that pretty often. He's gonna have ace king a lot too, which is obviously unfortunate. I cannot raise the turn and try a big bluff because I just don't represent anything in the world. By doing that, anything that like is kind of nutsy is going to obviously bet the flop. So I can't turn my hand into a bluff. I can't fold right away on the turn. It would be way too weak. He's betting again on the river. Kind of sucks, and his bet is kind of big, and I would tend to believe that he would bet a bit smaller with ace king, But then again, he could have checked aces on the flop, and he could have checked kings on the flop, so he could still have some nuts type of hands, and he could bet ace king that way. I don't know him that much to say that much about his betting range. My range is not that strong, which would be a plus for me to call the river. But his range for 3-betting me with these positions squeezing pre-flop is pretty strong. So I don't think the river call is profitable, even with all the draws missed. The only draw that I call the turn with that has missed is club flush draw. I'm probably betting a spade flush draw on the flop. So all in all, I think river is a fold, but I do think it's kind of closer than what most people would assume. Here I could call. If the fish was deeper, I would definitely call here. But the fish having like 60 big blinds, I don't think I can play queen 8 suited profitably here. Even with Nanoneko being pretty deep, I think I'm just going to lose the pot way too often. Coming back on the trying to get better for fun, I think I've ran over the subject pretty much. I don't really have much more to say about that. What else? I had something in mind, it's going to come back, don't worry. So yeah, basically I decided to try and get better and decided to try and target my own leagues. And I'm not a mathematics guy, that is for sure. But I felt like this definitely was one of the weakest points of my game. I think I wasn't using my HUD enough, nearly as often and as much as I should do, and as I could do to gain like the maximum edge. And I knew I had Jesus. I had never looked at my pre-flop stats and those kind of things to see if I had any sort of leagues pre-flop compared to the very best players. So I did that, and I've learned to use my HUD a lot more in some situations to try to balance my range better and to try to read people's ranges better as well. It starts with pre-flop. Obviously, I'm taking giving a lot more attention to 3-bet percentages from every position, and like fold to 3-bet from every position, and how much they open from every position, and all that stuff. And I do think it has given me a pretty big hedge compared to how I was playing more by feeling and just using my standard regular, like, okay, I'm 3-betting from time to time every single guy and stuff. Targeting the guys with the most fold to 3-bet is obviously something that is going to be good for your game in general. And I think like all the infos in your HUD are so free. I mean, it's all infos that you can use at any time. That if you learn how to do it, basically it's free info, and it's very easy to get better by using that. So this is something that I think pretty much everyone should look into. I'm not gonna give you like big detailed video on that because I'm still working on that quite a lot, and I'm not there yet. I'm not like master of the HUD and the stats and stuff. I might do that. I'm probably going to do that later, but I'm going to make that kind of video later. But I just want to tell you that this is something that I've looked into a lot, and that definitely has helped me get better and helped my game a lot and helped me recover from my downswing. When you are targeting basically your weaknesses in your leagues as you try to get better, you have to be very, very, very honest with yourself, and you have to be very modest. And it's tough from time to time to go ahead and say, okay, there are part of my games that totally suck and that I can be a lot better at. But the truth is, if you are watching your video, you're probably not one of the top 10 players in the world. And if you're not one of the top 10 players in the world, you probably have a lot of weaknesses that if you put work into working on them, if you put the hours not even the hours. I mean, it's not that long to sit down and try to work on your game. If you put some time on that, you will get better and it will help you for sure. And I'm pretty much of a living proof of that. Like I said, not much info on this guy. I think with the 5 getting there, 8-9 is now a straight. He checks back the turn. I do think I have the best hand pretty often, but I still think he's going to fold some one pair type of hands if I bet pretty big on the river. That beats me. Stuff like, I don't know, pair of 8s. I could have slow played the flop for sure. All the draws on the flop pretty much got there. So yeah, pair of 8s, ace king sometimes, pair of 9s, pair of 10s are probably going to fold to a pretty big river bet here. So I think betting river is better than checking it and hoping to have the best hand. It's just more better, yeah. So far, I think he has folded a lot. This guy has folded a lot to my 3 bets. He has 70%, and I do have a pretty nice hand once again. I'm just gonna pound on him to see how he reacts to that. At some point, I'm gonna start adjusting if he starts adjusting himself. But I do like to have a pretty big maniac image at the tables, and I think it's going to help me, of course, later. I'm usually working with Hold'em Manager, but like I said, this is my Mac, and I'm not exactly used to it. I wanted to watch his VPIP from every position. It's pretty linear, like 14 from EP, 26 and 27. I think he probably should open a bit more buttons, but I'm not even sure. It's not like per every single position, which kind of sucks. I would like detailed cutoff and button stats. Something that I would definitely look into most of the time, but I don't have that here. He has full 3-bet 61 so far. I 3-bet that guy, but yeah, it looks like he's not opening a lot from the button, which gives me less incentive to 3-bet him from the blinds. But still, it looked like I can definitely 3-bet those kind of hands profitably, even if he's not opening that much. It looks like player are not willing to fight back at me so far a lot. So I'm just normally gonna keep on pounding until they just get sick of me. But at the same time, they are 3-6 regular, so they're not dumb ass guys, and I expect them to make some moves and make some good moves at some point, like start 4-betting with a good range and not be too unbalanced. And I think it's pretty basic stuff, and I don't think many players at these stakes nowadays are so unbalanced that like you can pound on them so often. But these players are gonna come from time to time, and by watching stats and stuff, this is definitely something that that you will see more pop-up players that just fold to 3-bet no matter what happens, pretty much every single time, to like 80-85%, no matter who's doing it and how often he does it. So like I said, this is free info, and this is definitely something that you want to use. I'm gonna call this one. I'm definitely alternating between 3-betting and calling in this spot. I'm gonna call this time for no real reason. Checking. I'm not going to 3-bet that guy who's playing 16-14. I just think it would suck, obviously. Not much more. Here, against GMC, I'm going to flat ones pretty often here. He's not betting a lot on the turn. He's betting. I'm gonna call since he's just not betting a lot on the turn. On the flop, he is continuation betting 63, and on the turn he's betting. Okay, that's a continuation betting stat. I looked at the bet stat, which was 34, but he's continuation betting 50, which is kind of high. He's not giving up as often as I thought he did, so I kind of don't like my flop flat that much. I did have 1 over and 2 backdoors, otherwise I'm not flatting that ever, and I don't think it's a board where I get bluffed that often. I do think it's a board where he's going to give up from time to time, of course. If the turn is a good card, not a good card for him to barrel. Basically, if the ace comes, he's probably going to barrel that. So I'm getting a street there from his bluff and stuff. I just felt like flowing out of position was right there with the backdoors that I had. I'm not going to push too much right here on that guy. I feel like exact same like position, one orbit right after I did it. I really feel he's gonna like random 4-bet bluff me way too often, and I don't want to 5-bet shove over either. Here I could bet, I could check. I definitely prefer a check in a vacuum against most players. I don't think you get 3 streets of value from pretty much anything, and checking obviously under reps your hand and makes it easy for you to get 2 streets on turn river from a lot of things, and you're not building a big pot on the flop if you are beaten. So checking back is pretty much my default play there. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And I've talked about like fixing my own leagues and using stats and stuff, and like I said, I'm gonna make a more detailed video about stats at some point in my video maker career. But I told to myself, oh, this is a big bet. I asked myself before making that video, what are the most common mistakes of people who are not moving up, basically, who are stuck at mid stakes and have problem moving up. I'm gonna concentrate on flipping a set first. This did not work. And a couple of leagues that I've targeted, I had a lot in my head, but I kind of lost them talking since the beginning of the video. It's gonna come back. But the very first one that I know is a league of most players who are not great players, is that they don't bluff enough. Simple as that. Not enough players are bluffing at mid stakes, like the regulars and stuff. And not only that, but not enough players are bluffing, and when they do, they tend to give up their bluffs way too fast. It's often like a one stab thing of okay, I'm gonna see if he has anything and then shut down, and that makes people so easy to play against, and that is a big reason most of the time why people tend to suck, basically. And at some point during my downswing, I discovered that I had the exact opposite problem, that I was just bluffing way too much. And by realizing that kind of thing, like I said, you have to be so modest and so honest about your game. And modesty is one of the single biggest things that will get you very far, basically, as a poker player. I think if you're able to be honest, I'm coming back with the same words because I suck in English and I don't have any more synonyms, but if you can be as honest as possible with your game, you will improve so much more than if you believe something is, and if your ego gets in the way. And ego is one of the biggest downfall of poker players. And where I want to get with that is that before even thinking about getting better and trying to move up and finding back your love for the game, by doing so, you have to sit down and ask yourself, okay, what are my leaks? What do I feel like I'm doing wrong? Of course, you can hire a coach, and this coach is likely to answer your questions on the domain and find your leaks and stuff. But I don't think it's gonna, like, I have nothing against coaching, of course, and I do it myself, and I think it's a very good way to get better. But I don't think it's as efficient as sitting down yourself and finding your own mistakes. Because when you do find a way to find your own mistakes, and when you do arrive to conclusions by yourself. You obviously learn a lot more, and you get a lot better, a lot faster, basically. And at least give it a try. If you feel like you're not sure what are your problems, what are your leaks, give it a try. And first thing you want to ask yourself doing that is basically, what how are people reacting to my game that makes me believe that I have leaks? Are people folding too much to your value bets? Do you feel like every single time you have a hand, people are just folding to you, especially regulars and good hand readers? Do you feel that way, or do you feel like you're missing value in a lot of spots, not only against regular but against fishes and stuff? Do you feel like all your bluffs are getting called and all your values are not getting called, basically? Do you feel like all your bluffs are getting called and stuff like that? Those are some pretty good guidelines, I think, for you to sit down on, and just with by answering that thing, and then you don't even have to look at stats and stuff when you're thinking about that. You are going to have very good guidelines on what you are doing wrong. I could call here, but I don't have any sort of info against that player, so I'm not really comfortable playing that out of position, even if we're deepish. Here, this is definitely going to be a bet, and at least a 2 streets bluff, because he's going to call the flop with all of his queens, obviously, and he's going to fold those pretty often by the turn or the river. He called very fast on the flop, which leads me to believe that he's weaker than stronger most of the time. If he thinks for a while and then calls the turn, I mean, I don't have any info on the guy. I just have 70 yens on him, and I don't think any stats will help me that much in that spot. But especially with the speed that he called the flop, I think I was going to bluff out my stack pretty much every single time. And worst thing happens, I get a read on the guy and I get some info if we get to showdown, and I get a good maniac and mage. I'm gonna 3-bet. I skipped an orbit, so I'm not gonna skip 2 in a row, I guess. And I'm going to dunk lead that, especially with the ace of clubs here. I think this is a perfect dunk leading situation. And I get 4-bet that time. My feeling was right that he looked like he was about to get tired of me pounding on him. But whatever, no timing. I could have had a hand as well, and he's opening quite a lot, so I don't mind that. So yeah, the guidelines that I've given you, how you feel people react to your game. Ask yourself when trying to find your own leaks. Think about the very best players that you play against regularly, day in, day out, and ask yourself, how are these players exploiting me? How are they better than me? Why are they better than me? And why do they have success against me, especially people you have trouble against? And just by looking back on that, and then okay, that sucked. Looking back on that, and then trying to analyze that, looking back on hands, going in your HUD and your Ola manager, basically in your session statistics, and looking at versus the players you have problems playing against. Look at which kind of line they are taking. What makes it that you have so much trouble against them, basically? Is it like, do they put you in tough spots every time? Do you feel like you should try to avoid these kind of spots more? Or are they just catching your bluffs every single time, or stuff like that? And by doing so, I think this is first a very good way to be honest about yourself, and like realize where you are making most of your mistakes. Do you feel like you're just bleeding money to them because you're never winning a hand or stuff like that? If you look down on that, and it takes a lot of modesty and it takes a lot of honesty about your game, because you have to realize and you have to be honest in the fact that there are players better than you that you are playing against day in and day out. And even if as a whole they are not better than you, if they give you any sort of trouble in certain specific situations, basically you definitely want to look back on that and review that. And the more you review that by yourself and the more you come to conclusions by yourself, the faster you will get good and the more things that are going to click in your head. And you need honesty for that, but you need a lot of self confidence too, of knowing that your adjustments are the right ones. And I mean, you get self confidence with practice, obviously, and I mean you cannot buy self confidence in cereal box, unfortunately. But if you don't have enough, work on that first, because that's another big thing. Like, leaving your ego besides modesty and self-confidence are, I think, the three biggest mindsets that you need as a poker player to be really, really good, really excellent, other than the actual poker skills, basically. And if you feel like you are off on one of those three things, you definitely want to look into that. I am going everywhere with my talking, but I hope this is interesting. I didn't have like specific plan. I told myself I was just going to talk about stuff like I did in my, like I said, playing your A game video, and reviews were good about that video. So I'm gonna keep doing that, I guess, for the next 45 minutes. I'm probably going to end part 1 approximately right here. So see you on part 2.